Hello and welcome to the Dissect and Connect podcast. I'm your host, Mike Wade. This is the podcast where we explore population health issues impacting your community. Dissect and Connect is a service of New River Valley Community Services and the Montgomery County Prevention Partners. Angela Scott oversees the Office of Peer Supports and Recovery for New River Valley Community Services. She's a licensed professional counselor and has been employed with the agency for over 33 years. Her career has been dedicated to supervising and helping to develop behavioral health care programming for adults with mental health disorders, substance use disorders, and intellectual disabilities. So Angela, welcome to the Dissect and Connect podcast.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So we're going to jump right in with the questions, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So I'm glad that you've taken time out of your schedule to be with me today.
Thank you.
All right, so what is a peer exactly?
Well, that's a question that gets asked a lot. I think that everybody's got a different idea about what it means, but peer at the NRVCS agency is actually a specific job role. There was 3 years ago, the state of Virginia, through the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services, actually created a whole new workforce for the state of Virginia, and it's called Certified Peer Recovery Specialists, or Peer Recovery Specialists, but we mostly just use slang and say peer.
So what are the benefits to having a peer on staff?
Well, a peer recovery specialist is actually somebody that's been trained to utilize their own lived experience in recovery. And when I say that, I mean people who have been diagnosed and have lived experience with addictions, substance use disorders, or mental health diagnoses like depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, folks who have lived experience with the symptoms and the things that come with having an illness or an addiction. And then they go into recovery, and then they are trained. They receive a 72-hour course the state of Virginia offers, and they pursue certification, which means they also have to experience 500 supervised residency hours as a peer, and then they have to take an exam, and then they are certified through the state of Virginia, and then they also move on to become they register their certification. So it's a highly trained, a highly regulated peer. The peer role is a highly trained and regulated position within the state of Virginia. And our agency, about 3 years ago, decided to actually build an office of peer supports, because the agency was really dedicating itself to this new workforce and wanted to provide the position to our constituents in the New River Valley. And it's really a very new and exciting role. And what's different that a peer can bring is using their lived experience. They're expected to actually share their experiences with people who are facing having diagnoses and having substance use disorders. And so they actually use their lived experience to engage that person and to provide hope and to help them engage themselves in the treatment and the help that's surrounding them. So a peer person is really like a shoulder-to-shoulder bridge, walking somebody through the process of getting services and learning what it means to live differently.
And peer services are now identified as a billable service, is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, and we actually got some really good news today I was hoping to tell you about, but Medicaid is the state's insurance company that pays for us, the agency, to provide services to people that live in the New River Valley. And so Medicaid actually developed a new service in 2017 called Medicaid Peer Supports. And it offers individual and group services that are delivered by a peer staff. And it's a complementary service. You know, peers can do a lot, and the role itself is expected to be a complementary service along with therapy, psychiatry, counseling, case management. And so, yes, Medicaid is now, it's provided us a way so that our agency can provide a service that we can receive payment for, which will help us to be able to provide more services to more people in the River Valley. And the good news was that we heard today that there is new legislation going in called the PEER Act of 2020, and it is going to ask for Medicare to also provide peer services. So it's going to expand the people who are going to be eligible for peer services, and that's wonderful. You know, it is it's a service that has been around for a while, but it's now becoming organized, and it is now considered an evidence-based practice, so that we've been doing it long enough. When I say we, I mean the country has been doing it long enough in different aspects that there's research about peer services. Organizations that have strong peer services are starting to experience less hospitalization, less incarcerations, more engagement into the clients that we serve, more engagement into the services that they're receiving. So it's becoming known for that, and other insurance companies and other organizations are starting to trust the service, and they see its results, and so they're trying to grow and build the service.
Yeah, that's great news. How many peers are at NRVCS currently?
Well, we currently have 13 full-time peers, and they're working in 9 different programs within the organization. When we first started 3 years ago, we had 6 peers. And the 6 peers that we had were in various programs. In fact, the peers, our PACT services, which is our psychiatric assertive community treatment programs, actually had peers about 20 years ago.
Right.
So there has been an idea that we know that somebody who's been through it can help somebody else see themselves through it. And that's an idea that the VA system has really developed when the Middle East conflicts were happening and soldiers were coming back with head injuries and PTSD. The VA system realized that they needed to further develop their peer programs. And so the VA system started to outline position titles and management practices for peer services. So there have been peers around, and I think that in the mental health world and the Department of Behavioral Health and Disability Services with the state of Virginia, they just allowed themselves to be informed by what the VA was experiencing. We've had collections, like I said, of peer type staff that worked in substance use disorder and also with the PAC team. But in the last 3 years, our agency, I'm so proud of NRVCS and our administration here. They have really dedicated themselves to having the foresight to start to build in more peer positions within the agency. So we've gone from having 6 peers in different aspects, and those peers were not part of this new movement of the growing workforce. And so it was really 3 years ago that you either grandfathered in, or new peers are actually going through a much more strict process of learning their job role. And so 3 years ago we had 6. Today we have 13, and they, like I said, they work in 9 different programs. And so we're really excited about that. We're all learning from it, and it has been a real favorable response from the staff. When a clinician or a psychiatrist or a case manager has the opportunity to see a peer working with somebody who's coming into the MAT clinic, or who's coming in through same-day access, or who's part of a drug court, and they actually see the trusting relationship that can be built really quickly with the peer, they're really impressed by it, and they really want to see it develop and grow. So I think that the foresight of our administration, watching this new position, this new workforce grow across the country, the VA system informing us how to organize it, and then the state of Virginia actually offering a Medicaid billable service, and the state of Virginia, through the department, actually has an office of recovery that oversees peer services as well. So there's this really nice flow of support, and there's also a governmental structure that's supporting us as well.
It's really been great to see this grow as a viable option for service for folks that need it. So I'm really excited that we've come as far as we have. But I have to ask, what are some of the potential challenges that come with having peers on the payroll?
Wow, that's a good question, and that's complicated. But I think when we're looking at somebody who has lived experience in recovery, who is expected to share that experience, then everybody around them becomes more aware of what it's like to have an addiction. There is an element, there's a tragic landscape around addiction that you're aware of. I'm looking at end overdose in the New River Valley behind you. And there's a difficult landscape. And it's people who are in recovery will tell you, if I had continued to use, or if I hadn't started taking care of my mental illness, that I was either going to end up in jail, institutionalized, or dead. And so it's difficult sometimes to sit and be with somebody who has a difficult story to tell. Mm-hmm. And usually all of us have our own personal experiences with being around somebody with addiction, or our own mental health issues, or our own substance use issues. And so it can sometimes be an uncomfortable space to be in when you're with a peer. And I think that the way we overcome that is with education and with a lot of exposure of our peer staff to the workers around them, so that they can see, that was then, this is now. Anybody that works in an ER, or if you have somebody that you love with an addiction or a mental illness, there's a difference between that person when they're in active addiction as opposed to when recovery starts. And one of the things that we're trying to promote at NRVCS and through the use of peer services is helping folks see that you can move through a hard place and that you come to a place of recovery. And so the language is different with recovery. We're used to hearing in behavioral health care, we're used to hearing the language of diagnosis and treatment. And we're not really as used to talking about, wellness and recovery. So I think fear is one of the things that's difficult. Mm-hmm. People being tweaked in their own personal experiences that were hard. It can be difficult too. But I think that what's beautiful is once you get to know one of our peers, and then you hear the triumph and the hard work that's happened for them moving forward, people are just really excited and encouraged by that. Knowing a peer helps you be more brave in your own life, I think. And it helps you to offer more grace to yourself and to others as you watch people go through difficult times with what they're facing.
Well, it certainly gives you hope, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And hope, hope is the foundation for why we do peer work. Mm-hmm. When a peer is working with somebody and they can say, I'm so sorry that you're getting ready to face jail. I've been there, and we get through it. And this is how I got through it. And that in that moment, that other person receives hope that they're going to be okay, and that they know that they've got somebody who's been there and is not afraid to support them through it and talk to them.
Yeah. Let's talk about the 401 Peer Center. It's been up and running for a couple of years now and has had some success in connecting folks with support groups and other resources. So if you would, give our listeners an overview of the 401 and its purpose.
Sure. So I could talk about the 401 for a while. I'm really excited about it. It has been there for a couple of years, and it's been funded through grants that our administrative staff have been able to work with. But it was really a grant that was offered to us based on our. There was a grant that was offered to 3 CSBs in the state of Virginia, and I think it was offered to us because they had confidence in our Office of Peer Supports growing and our dedication to recovery. And so one was offered to Norfolk, one grant was offered to Norfolk, one grant was offered to us. And I think the other grant was offered, I want to say Charlottesville or Harrisonburg. I don't remember. But the point is, we got a grant, and I had just come off of a trip where the department in Virginia, the department, we call it BHDS, and I get the letters wrong sometimes, but they sent 24 behavioral health care workers and peers. I was included. We went to Rhode Island, and Rhode Island had a special program there. It was a peer center. It was a community center. Now, we were going there to learn about their opioid treatment and the work that their peers were doing in emergency rooms. But I got a chance to see a really lively downtown Rhode Island. We're in Pawtucket. And I got to see this just really busy peer center where people were coming in off the streets, coming in from their lunch hour from work, and they were coming to AA meetings. They were using banks of computers. Got really excited about that right about the same time the grant came around. And so our administration took a real brave step forward in wanting to fight the opioid epidemic here in the New River Valley. And they decided to open up the Peer Center. And the Peer Center is not treatment. It's actually just an open door community center where anybody who is seeking recovery, and you don't have to be abstinent, but anybody who's seeking recovery can walk in during hours of operation and find just a warm, comfortable, safe place to be and spend time. And we have staff there. There's currently 3 staff there that will be able, who are in recovery, who are peer recovery specialists, who can talk to them and meet them where they're at. They can sit down and have a snack. We've got food there. There are computers there that folks can, work on resumes. They can check on their social media. We have a schedule where we've had AA meetings and NA meetings. We currently have an ACOA, Adult Children of Alcoholics, meeting as well. COVID has been a whole nother chapter in the life of 401, just like it is for everybody else. But the center itself is new and really unprecedented in the New River Valley. And anybody can come by and visit. Hopefully we'll have our doors open soon and folks can come in and check it out.
Well, I definitely want to come back and talk about COVID a little bit more since you brought it up. But why is a facility like the 401 Peer Center important to the rest of the community?
When you say rest of the community, you mean people who are not in recovery?
Yeah, people that don't necessarily utilize that resource, but just community members in general.
Well, I would hope that most people would understand the importance of a safe place that somebody can go to and have relationships or celebrate a holiday where they can know they can go there and there won't be drugs and alcohol present, and there will be people there who are trained in how to talk to somebody who might be having some mental health issues. And I think that I think that for the community also, it's hope for them. Mm-hmm. That if they know that they themselves or somebody they love is struggling with addiction or substance use disorder or depression or anxiety, that they can see that, look, there's a safe place in our community where people understand, and I can go myself, or I can, refer my family member or my neighbor, and they'll be able to go there, and quickly somebody will greet them at the door and talk with them about what they're experiencing.
So let's go back to COVID. How has the 401 Peer Center and just peer services in general been impacted by the pandemic?
Well, could probably talk about that for a while too. I think that one of the wonderful things that happened is that quickly the state of Virginia decided that it was okay and authorized the use of telemedicine and telehealth services. Mm-hmm. So our peer support staff that are working in the different programs have actually been able to utilize video and telephone chatting to reach out to people. And for folks that are in recovery, for just a lot of our clients, for the agency, getting to appointments is not always easy.
Right.
You know, we have work schedules, children. Sometimes people don't have transportation or reliable transportation.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a lot of ways, being able to utilize telehealth has actually increased our ability to be able to make contact with folks. So that's been a really good thing that's happened during COVID.
Absolutely.
I think the hard thing is that, of course, the social distancing and us having to close our the peer center doors, but just being together and addiction recovery requires a lot of connection and maintaining relationships. And so, you know, when folks are used to meeting for 12-step meetings like NA and AA or any other type of support group, COVID has caused a lot of isolation. And, you know, sometimes you hear people say the opposite of addiction is connection.
Mm.
And so connection is extremely important. So a lot of the fellowship meetings have had to figure out other ways to meet, to be able to social distance and meet, but it really has left a lot of folks that normally reach out for individual and group support, has left a lot of, you know, disconnection. And so a lot of loneliness. And that is, that's a very difficult thing for a person in recovery, is to figure out how to work around that isolation.
Encouraged to see recently that the 401 has developed a jam-packed schedule of Zooms, opportunities to connect virtually that is pretty much a full schedule Monday through Friday. I mean, it's a day packed full of those opportunities.
We're really encouraged. The supervisor, Leroy Robinson, has been working with his staff, and they have come up with trying just a different way to reach out to people using our Zoom. It's once again, it's not treatment. Zoom is an open community. You know, you're welcome to sign in and join, and they're paying more attention to the topics and the discussions that they're having. And we're definitely seeing an increase in the use of Zoom. We are hoping soon to actually have individual appointments where people can come in the center, maybe, you know, one or just a few at a time.
Right.
So we're looking at being creative, and we feel really hopeful, you know, that we'll be able to continue to move towards, you know, the door opening too.
Yeah.
So yes, more connection. Leroy's been working with the staff, and they have definitely gotten more folks utilizing the service. And we really rely on our Facebook page as well. Leroy's managing that, and that's going really well. And our posts are really starting to reach more people. We had a post reach 3,000 people the other day.
Oh, that's great.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. So I'm glad that the 401 staying on top of it. So, Angela, not to date you or age you in any way, but you've been at this for a while.
Yeah.
As I mentioned in the bio, a little over 3 decades now. Did you think 25 years ago that you might ever see a time where folks who once utilized our services are now your coworkers?
You know, I don't know that I really sat and thought about that, but in part maybe, and I'm so excited about it. I've always worked at our agency in our what we used to call our community living part of our agency, and so it has been a while. You reminded me. It's actually been 33 years, I think, and I've done a lot of work in different aspects of mental health and substance use disorder, and even to, you know, going back and forth to the state hospital, helping people come out of the long-term units, and then helping them to discharge into the community, and helping folks in our state training centers come out of the training centers and into the community. And then working with our old clubhouse model,
right.
And helping folks who had mental health diagnoses socialize more. You know, the social connection is what's so important. And so I have been around the programs that we really focused in on helping people come back out into the community and making those connections, and was exposed to peer staff working through the clubhouse model and the PACT model too. So when I was asked 3 years ago if I would be interested in helping to develop the Office of Peer Support, it was in kind of the same time we were looking at the CCBHC accreditation, and it was one of the requirements of that. And I said, if you all are serious about doing this, I'm in. And I was really happy to say they were serious about recovery. Being a recovery-oriented system of care means that you must provide peer services. So it's really feeding back the lived experience and the wisdom that people in recovery have gained to be able to inform the system. So it's definitely about providing the service to our constituents who are suffering and trying to gain a foothold into recovery. But it's also about informing the staff and the administration and the community that people don't need to be in institutions. People can live through recovery, and they can more than live through recovery. They can educate themselves and be trained and then work in the field alongside of us, as co-workers and our co-peers, helping folks to understand what it means to live in recovery and to have the hope, and to be able to engage and then turn around and help somebody else. A lot of these ideas have been in the community through 12-step fellowship, helping one, sponsor and sponsee,
Sure.
and learn one. What is it? Learn one, teach one, do one. That idea. We all are helping each other along this journey. And who better to teach a large behavioral health organization? I heard 900 employees or close to. We're a large behavioral health care organization in Southwest Virginia. And who's going to inform us? And we need to be informed, but it's the people that are now living in recovery who have received our services, who really have a wonderful voice and opinion to teach us as other workers what's helpful and what's not helpful.
Yeah, I've been fortunate in my position to get to know some of our peers, and I'm just in awe. I'm just in awe of them. They're amazing people. They truly are.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what have you gained yourself from being directly associated with our peers?
Gosh, I didn't know you were going to ask me personal questions.
They can't all be cupcakes, Angela.
Well, I have to say, 33 years, and then working now in the last few years with peer, and looking at my own retirement in a few years, I can't be more thankful than to be able to say I've been allowed to work with the Office of Peer Supports and Recovery. I think that I've learned so much personally and spiritually and professionally from working with peers. I don't know where to start on that. I think grace and mercy come into play. I think a much more realistic understanding about the impact. We call, so I bridge I bridge two worlds when I work this position. I'm a clinician. I have my license. I'm a licensed professional counselor. And so I've always been part of the treatment team, or the people who tell people basically what to do,
right.
Either helping a resident through their counseling residency, or supervisors of programs, or, folks working with our clientele. And there is a different language of treatment and clinician than there is with people who are in recovery and our peer staff. And so I feel like I've learned the importance of trying to help people understand where people are coming from. So it's been like a bridge. So I feel like I've really gotten a chance to utilize all my professional experience, also using that to help peers understand the larger system, and then they help me understand their experience, and then I can go back and take that to the clinical staff and say, this is what I think we should be paying attention to when they tell us this. And so there's that aspect of being a bridge. I've been able to also take all of that information to the meetings that I go back and forth to in Richmond. And it's sort of the same thing. There are a lot of people in recovery who are also working jobs across the state and in the government, and then be able to just bring that information flow back and forth.
But that exchange of perspectives, that's really what makes it work at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's really important.
Given your vast experience, I wonder if you have any thoughts about how we as a society have changed in the time that you've been in the field around acceptance of mental health and substance use disorders?
Well, the first thing that I think of is stigma.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first came here 33 years ago, you know, there was a lot of work being done to try to overcome, you know, the darkness of the history of mental health treatment. And certainly there have been a lot of bright spots and important, you know, there have been a lot of important advancements.
Mm-hmm.
There's been medications that have just been able to turn people's lives around. And, you know, there was a deinstitutionalization movement in the 1950s to 70s that mandated that people be brought out of psychiatric institutions and be able to be integrated and have full lives in our communities. So, you know, I've been able to see that happen. And then what's happened during that process is that, you know, people have been exposed to folks with mental illness. And so, you know, we're all learning, you know, what is normative and what can we understand as safe and healthy, and what part of mental illness do we need to come alongside closer to somebody and have that person, you know, we call having somebody assessed, or does that person need more restrictive services for them to stay safe for themselves and others. So there's a lot that's changed through the years. And I think that we have more and more people are living, you know, full lives with the help of medications, with the help of social networks, with the help of services in the community. You know, I always say the history of mental health has, you know, hospitalization in it, and then the deinstitutionalization happened, and then people were coming out of the hospitals and living in communities. But there was at one point almost like a revolving door, because there weren't enough support services set up in our community. And so we developed then mental health centers, and we had, now people didn't have to necessarily go to a state hospital. They could come to a community center and see a psychiatrist and a therapist. And then, you know, they're still coming into the office. And then we developed this idea of in-home services, and case managers came about. And then case managers actually started going to the homes of people who needed help. And we started developing services, not just for medications, but also making sure that people had, you know, education, and they had vocation, they had jobs, and they had good medical health, and they had spiritual and social supports. So we, the state of Virginia ended up using that biopsychosocial model to build what we have now in our present day behavioral health care centers, which is a lot of in-home services. You know, we have staff that go into people's homes. They help them make sure that they have enough food, that they've got medicine that they need, that they have therapy, and they have social networks. And that's been a wonderful development that I've been able to witness and be a part of, and help to develop some of those programs, or be a part of others developing programs.
Yeah.
I'm really proud to work where we work.
Yeah, same here. I think too, though, with the advent of technology, and while social media certainly has its ills and can be the cause of a lot of problems, I do think the fact that folks have access to that type of technology and that type of platform has allowed people who are in recovery an opportunity to tell their own story in their own terms, in their own words, instead of waiting on, you know, a media outlet or an agency to share their story. They can be open and provide that on their own terms. And I think that's been huge.
I agree. That's been wonderful.
So if you had a magic wand or 3 wishes to enhance the lives of individuals who live with behavioral health conditions, what would you do?
Well, you're asking a good question, and I would just say more peers. And so, yeah, whenever I get an opportunity to talk with a manager or a service manager, you know, if you've got any possibility of funding another peer in your program, I promise you that your data will look so much better at the end of the year, because you're going to provide more engagement, and you're going to have less hospitalizations and less incarcerations. You're going to have more people who are meeting their goals. And so my magic wand at this point, I'm so focused. I want the Office of Peer Supports to be strong, and I want there to be a peer in every program that our agency offers. And that really drives my daily thinking, and that's what I'm here for.
I like it. Do you have any recommended resources, books, websites, what have you, for our listeners?
I love teaching people about peers, and I love part of my job is to also help peers become certified, and to also I work with LPCs, licensed professional counselors, to get their license. And we have so many resources available to us on the internet. I love to research, and I love to learn and read. And if you just Google peer supports in Virginia, you're going to get a really nice list of places to go visit. I think that there are more and more, I'm going to say private or independent, probably is a better word, independent organizations for peers. And there are peers all over the world now. I mean, there are international peer organizations, there are international peer conferences. SAMHSA is the federal oversight for a lot of substance use and mental health work that we do. So you can visit SAMHSA, you can visit, lots of advocacy organizations like Vocal or Mental Health of America. There are a few more. The State Department is also a place you can go. I love to go to NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Health. I love to go to NIMH, National Institute for Mental Health. You visit some websites and you get a nice, if you visit a lot, you get a really nice perspective, because some of those organizations are there fully just for advocacy. And they're usually started and maintained by people who have diagnosed mental illness or a substance use disorder. And so their website is all about advocacy from the point of view of people who have that lived experience. That's a great type of resource. And then you've got other like research institutes that are on the cutting edge of what is a really good practice, medication wise, or what is a good evidence-based practice, intervention, behavioral health care wise. So then you've got to be careful that you're not, you got to be careful that and understand the website that you want and what their promotion is, because sometimes they're from private drug companies, and so they have their opinion.
Right.
So I think you just want to look for peers. Peer support network is another one. You just want to Google peers. I get a lot of calls. I probably once a week, I have a staff person saying, I have a client that wants to be a peer. Or somebody says, what's a peer again? Because I think my brother wants to do that. Or, and so I spend time every week talking to people about the process and what it actually means. Because we have to understand and appreciate that when somebody steps into this role, and it is a state certification and a state regulated title, then all that is public information.
Right.
And so when a peer takes this role on, they are so dedicated and serious, because they understand that this is not a private thing anymore for them, and that they know that, and they're stepping out in faith and trust that sharing what they've experienced is going to help other people. Boy, that is just something to honor, isn't it?
It's truly courageous. It really is. And you made some great recommendations, Angela, for sources of information, and I'll include links to some of those in our show notes for today's episode.
Thank you.
Any parting words of wisdom for our listeners?
I would just say, find somebody that is either in active addiction or in recovery, or that has been diagnosed with a mental health disorder, and determine yourself to make them your lifelong friend. Learn how to love and live alongside of people who have substance use disorder, who are in recovery or active addiction, and make the changes within yourself that helps you to understand and accept and support them.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Mike. Thank you. It was nice.
Dissect and Connect is sponsored by Teen Connections, a leadership program through Planned Parenthood South Atlantic that empowers youth with the facts about sexual health and the skills to build stronger, healthier relationships. It's free, totally virtual, and you can earn $100 when you graduate as a Teen Connections peer educator in your community. Join a Teen Connections program from home today. For more information, be sure to check out the show notes from today's episode. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Dissect and Connect podcast. To learn more about Montgomery County Prevention Partners or New River Valley Community Services, be sure to check us out on Facebook or visit nrvcs.org/podcast.